And greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Coming at you today with an impromptu. Um, Want to remind everybody, please hit that like, share, and subscribe. There's a PayPal link down below for anybody who wants to share some love. And of course, the StreamYard link is there for anybody who wants to join the panel. Um, like I said, impromptu because, you know, like I've said before, I'm not involved in all these drama panels. And so one of the things I want to hopefully express here is that, you know, I've come across on some of these panels as an angry old man. And that's one of those problems that I deal with. And I think I'm doing pretty good with it. And like I've said before, I never started in these panels for any other reason than to continue what I've been doing for almost 6 years here on YouTube now. 7, almost 8 years on Facebook. And that's literally just to show people as I go along my research and my interpretation of that research. Where I get that interpretation through multiple sources. And that's why I end up going from window to window to window and people lose me. It's just a correlation of the iteration of the same thing over and over again. The law is uniform throughout all jurisdictions. Isaiah 54:17. You're supposed to rise up and condemn anybody that places a judgment against you. That's when they come up and place what do they call? What is it in the scripture? One shall not. They don't call it lying. Bear false witness. One shall not bear false witness on their brother. So I'm only coming forth with what I'm a witness to, which is my observation, and then through my thoughts, theologies, psychology, philosophies, my interpretations, and then hopefully my presentation thereof will allow for a very close semblance of that interpretation. That's my best hope. I'm not here as a guru or anything. I'm just here to share my knowledge, as I've done from day one. Again, you can feed a man for a day if you give him a fish. You feed him for a lifetime if you teach him to fish. But the very base principle is that in that teaching, he continue on what he has learned by also teaching the next ones to fish. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. There is no other purpose except for the merits of the truths, or the truth merits, as we'll see. So we're going to take a look at the etymology as a base threat was made to, or a baseless threat was made to excommunicate me from this community. Now, first thing, excommunicate is a supposedly well-known term amongst most people. So here it says, to cut off by an ecclesiastical sentence, either from the sacraments of the church or from all fellowship and intercourse with its members. Now, most people would look at that and think whatever they're going to think, but my base is that in the sentence there is a root word. Sentence. The essence of being sent. Where were you sent from? This correlates to, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Okay? It's the ecclesiastical origins of the words that were written on your heart. Okay? The original communication. So let's take a look at the very beginning here on Etym Online. Communicate as a verb. So when you make a baseless threat, that you're going to excommunicate me from a community. First, we have to understand the term communicate. But before we get into that, there's also the requirement of what community. When you want to start devising communities, then you have to be able to tell us what community. Because if you're saying that people have to cop to the truth of that community, then it must be either your community or a community of people that also agree with that same concept, that one or the other is leading the rest. Okay? I'm not here to lead anybody, like I said yesterday. I'm here to walk my goddamn path, whether it be damned or divine and righteous. I don't know yet. In my heart, I feel I'm doing what is true and correct, and that's it. I'm not involved in any dramas. So here it says to impart when it comes to information, etc. Information of what? Now that can be intangible or information physically, to impart something, whether it be tangible or intangible. To give or transmit a quality, feeling, etc., as in a person, a character trait. To give or transmit. You transmit anger through your voice and the inflections and your actions. So there's both intangible and tangible there. To another. From Latin communicatus, past participle of communicare, to share. Communicate. Now that's kind of idiotic right there. I don't care who you are. If you understand language and definitions, you don't use the very term to define the very term. So this shouldn't even be there. Communicate shouldn't even be there. It's in the exact same form. If it comes in communicata, showing where it came from as an adoption of that form, and then in the form of the common usage, it changes, it morphs, it transforms to communicate. Impart, inform, literally to make common. To make common where something wasn't common before. Related to communis, common, public, general. So when you want to sit there and say you're going to excommunicate me from that which is common, you better be able to determine what is common. Is it your community, or is it an ecclesiastical community from which that term is derived? The beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And you're going to excommunicate me from God? You baseless, threatening motherfuckers better understand the language you speak. A man's intellect is limited and biased by his very vocabulary. Meaning to share, transmit, and here they use diseases, etc. is from 1530s. It's a communicative disease. It doesn't mean you talk to each other and it transmits. It just means that somehow it was transmitted through sharing. You might share the same bedclothes and get the same bed bugs. To open into each other. Common. Belonging to all. So while you're saying this community and common as the portion of community that you use in that very base term, common unity, the very language is formed in divisiveness. Owned or used jointly. General, of a public nature or character. Of a public nature or character, such as an English language published and used most indiscriminately by the majority of the world's population as a common lingua franca. If you understand common lingua franca, it's saying that those people are communicating because they don't have a common national language. Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Before thou wast cast from the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. So if you understand the United States as a business means a United States citizen, and you want to walk around with that United States citizen ID, claiming that you're a federal national, or a state resident ID, saying that you're a state resident, or a state national ID, saying you're a state national, you succumb to the constitutions that give up that very sovereignty. That's a constitutional device for divisions, categorical pre-treatment standards for which you would be classified. So you can be subject to this classy popularity contest about names and numbers, forgetting all about the message that you're supposed to communicate, and then try to make a baseless threat that you're going to excommunicate me from a message. Come the fuck on. Common, general, free. So in your community, where you sit there and time people out and block them, is that free? Or do we have to cop to the truth of your language skills? Man's intellect is limited and biased by his vocabulary, brothers and sisters. And like I said, I've been that bitch-ass slave too. Open. Public. Remember yesterday, open, gaping. From Latin, communis. In common, public, shared by all or many. So let me ask you: does communication sound like community? Does that sound like communism? Do you understand the language you speak, or are you being pretentious? We're going to look at that next. General, not specific. Not specific, not special, not a species. Why the fuck you think we'd talk about a species of money they're asking for in these courts? What species are you talking about? Are you talking about coffee beans? Because I'll gladly exchange one coffee bean for $1, dollar for dollar. Here's 1,483 of them, and you can keep that last quarter of a bean. Familiar, not pretentious. This is from a reconstructed Proto-Indo-European compound, held in common. What's that, held? Compound adjective formed together. What was that conferring that we went over yesterday in our thing about nationality and naturalization and the conference of that nationality? Was that a bringing together? Do you understand the language we're speaking? Do you have confidence in it? See, that's what we're really talking about. Confidence is a literary term that I use to express faith. Suffix form of root, MEI, to change, go, move. Hence, literally shared by all. This is one of those concepts that I thought about when I did that serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know that that's only me. The rest of the world is already changing. All I have to do is worry about me and changing with the world, learning how to adopt and adapt. The second element of the compound also is a source of Latin, munia, where we get the term money, duties, public duties, functions. See, we've been talking about those recently too. You see how it's all relative and correlates? Can you connect the dots? Am I good? Am I connecting these dots for you people? And remember, folks, that StreamYard link is down there. I'm going to put it down there one more time. Anybody wants to join the panel, feel free. It says, those related to Munia office, because it's official duties, official public duties, official functions that are delegated from an office. Perhaps reinforced in Old French by the Germanic form of pi, common e. Common, public, general, universal. Constitution of the Universal Postal Union. The very people that are supposed to be proficient in communicating with the people of the countries around the world. Remember the preamble of the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union, wherein the Constitution of the United States is a contractual underwriting and insurance agreement. And those that take an oath to that Constitution give up sovereignty. So if you claim to be a state national and proclaim sovereignty to that Constitution of the state, as that state national, again, you give up your sovereignty too. Keep claiming those state nationals. You don't understand the words you've been tricked into. Like I said, it's a beautiful language. I'm only trying to expose what I've learned. And it's all right in front of you. Watch what comes next. See, mean, adjective, which came to French via Frankish. Remember the franking rights. Remember the thing we did on, I did a thing on another gentleman's show, Open to Knowledge. I urge you to go check him out, Open to Knowledge. And some guy wanted to get on there and talk about me, didn't know anything about lingua franca. The very next day after I just put the video out about lingua franca, and he wanted to talk about Franco-lingua. So I had to teach him and his name. His name is root words. So I had to teach him and his ignorant ass what he was talking about, because he evidently didn't know the difference. As he exclaimed, he knows the root words. Yet he doesn't understand the very difference between Franco and Franca, and the very position of Franco-lingua versus lingua franca, wherein Franca means Frankish, as it relates to Jesuit and Jewish. Who were the Jews? They were known as the Jesuits. Now we call them Jewish, because do we really know? Used disparagingly of women and criminals since circa 1300, meaning pertaining equally to or proceeding equally from two or more, meaning usual, not exceptional, of frequent occurrence. Is from late 14th century, sense of not distinguished. Can you distinguish the difference? If not, then it's not distinguished what your communication is. So again, you make your baseless threat to excommunicate me from what community? What community do you have the authority to excommunicate me other than your own? Belonging to the general mass is from circa 1400 of things. Ordinary, not excellent. Jeremiah 1:5. Sanctified and ordained as every other ordinary living soul, wherein each one, being a man, after being cast forth from her mother's waters, discharged as that man and took the first breath of life and became a living soul. That is what's ordinary. We are not equal, we are ordinary. Common pleas is 13th century from Anglo-French commons pleas, hearing civil actions by one subject against another, as opposed to pleas of the crown. They got you all making charges against each other when the true effect is that you're not part of that motherfucking United States business, are you? You lying motherfuckers. Again, remember, I was a lying motherfucker for a long time. Common prayer is that done in public in unity with other worshipers. Blasphemy. Common stock, 1888. Do you know the common stock paperweight of that blank sheet of paper you walk around with? Did you know that's known as commercial paper because it's got a stock number? Common speech is the vernacular as opposed to Latin. Common good translates Latin bonum publicum. Bonum, as in bona fide. The commonweal, as in commonwealth. The college common room. You know, that's where most of your land grant banks are, college land grants, is one to which all members have common access. Intercommunicate reciprocally. Remember those reciprocal things that we've been talking about? See, that's a conference of a nationality, right? And like I said, that's an internationally protected person by the very one, the very entity that conferred it. Now, the state is using a residency against that. How dare they? That's a false communication. To change, go, move, with derivatives referring to exchange of goods and services within a society as regulated by custom or law. Do you see the difference, folks? Remember, I said these aren't laws, they're customs. And you are the customer. Customer agrees to make third party, make being the creator in expression, third party payment for consumer transactions, so long as it is understood that credit is given to the customer's account specifically. It forms all or part of a myth, amoeba, asm of common, commune, communicate, communication, communism, commute, congi, demean, emigrate, emigration, excommunicate, excommunication, immune, immutable, wherein God gave his immutable promise to seek his counsel and sealed it with the first oath, being the first seal, first oath, and first promise. Incommunicado, mad, mean, low quality. Mew, cage, muse, migrate, migration, miss, bad, wrong, mistake, mithras, molt, mistletoe, ooh, municipal. Federal, state, or municipal officer or agent. And you communicated to them in all of their municipal bonds that you're a resident, a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent deemed necessary by the board. You gave them that false information. You gave them that false communication. Of course, that's only because none of you seem to understand the truth of the damn communications to begin with. And yes, I said that correctly. Damned communications. Mutant, mutate, mutation, mutatus, mutandus, mutual. Permeable, permeate, permutation, permute, remunerate. Remuneration, transmutation, transmute, zenith. It is the hypothetical source for its existence is provided by changes, alternates, joins, meets, perverted, false, be changed into, to change, to go, pass, to move from one place to another, done in exchange. So you see there's an equality on both sides of the connotations of the use. Like I've said before, we have these terms called addictions, where it means pretty much the same thing as dedication. So one means or places a negative connotation on one's faith in doing things, while another places a positive connotation in one's faith in doing things. So this is like Dale Earnhardt Sr. having faith of many years of being a professional race car driver, had faith that he would be first in that race. Something did not happen the same as before, despite numerous times of doing the exact same thing and having good results. Even though he may not have placed first, he finished the race and he made good money and stuff. The one time it didn't work out, it ended his life. He died because of his dedication to racing. Will Dale Earnhardt Jr. follow the same thing? Is that not the same thing as a dedication, as an addiction? It's got a negative connotation to it, yet they still insist that he was just dedicated to racing. This is like the alcoholic that refuses to admit that he's addicted to alcohol. You're dedicated or you're addicted to things. And you can change those things throughout your life. So let's continue on. Alternately, to change, avoid. There's that excommunicate. And like I said, Psalms 121, verse 8, the Lord shall preserve thy going out, thy coming in from this time forth, and even forevermore. That breath of life is an act of God, and even if it's just to communicate in this sense, it's to pass your knowledge on to others who have a right to know. You have the right to express that knowledge through your communications, and other people have a right to know. This is your right of passage and portage of the Word of God. So long as you're doing it for the truth merits. Have dealings with, as commune, to make common, share, impart, as assign, allot, allocate, share out, as opposed to share, share out. So that's like an export, okay? Impart, export. You see the duality, the opposing dynamic? You have to learn what the language is and learn how to use it for your benefit. Exposing the inconsistencies and the malleability of that language so you can use it for your benefit. Expressing your concept, your intent, your ideologies, and not subject to some dogmatic system. Communicable, like I said earlier, communicable disease. To share, divide out. Again, this would be like to share out, divide out. Here they simply to share rather than to take share of. Inform, report, report. Import, export, impart. Facts or news. Communicate information to. First recorded late 14th century. Related, informed, informing. Mom was an informant. Okay? Hers was a communication. It didn't communicate the original communication. It imparted a vision, and it bifurcated a name. When they used the legal name objectively over the given and family name. Hypothecation of customer securities. Excommunication, put out of the community. So the only way somebody could make a true and founded claim of excommunicating somebody from a community, it would have to be their community. Okay? That way they could single-handedly excommunicate me from that community, and it would have to be defined. So again, if there's no definition of what that community is, and you make that baseless threat of excommunicating, now you have the duty to put out of the community. To expel from communion. What is communion, folks? You remember what that Catholic term communion is? Is that the of sound mind and body recognition of a junior lady or fellow that has a spiritual, talented, conceptual grasp of spirituality itself and is now capable of making an agreement to be brought up in the house as a child of God? From X, out. Render. See Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. This is when he wrote his word on the heart. Index finger of his right hand. And then while you were rendered in your mother's womb, your father planted the seed. And then you were from that point on rendered in your mother's womb. And that word grew on your heart as it was communicated by your mother to you. Every breath she took as an act of God. And what she did in her life, including all the nutrients and stuff as it relates to heal thyself, as well it relates to know thyself. In knowing thyself, once you know thyself and your purpose in the life is to bring on that next generation, it should be inherently most important and most exportant, again, to feed a man a fish, you feed him to give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, but to teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. But again, the real principle is to pass on that education, which should be inherent from moms and dads to their children. Why is that chain broken? Because everybody gives that up to a convenience of this modern society that says we can allow somebody else to bring our children up in these public educations and these false churches with these multiple variations of dual dichotomies with opposing dynamics that cause division in itself. They each one proclaim their own little communities. Render. Repeat, say again, recite, translate, give back, present, yield. How is it give back? Present. Remember that sentence. We were present. The sentence is already on our heart. We must convict ourselves. That's our own sentencing. Recognizing the word of God, the promise that he gave to seek counsel in him, immutable. So when we give back, it's to give back unto the God that we proclaim as our creator, what he's given to us. In that fidelity. From Vulgar Latin, rendere, a variant of Latin redere, give back, return, the prodigal son, returning, restore, restore. From red, back, see re. Did you understand that? Re comes from red. Combining form of dare, to give, to give. The alteration in Vulgar Latin was perhaps simply nasalization, or perhaps an analogy of its antonym, prender. Render, prender. See how close they are? To take. Itself a contraction of prehender. Is there prehension? Is there a comprehension? Do you comprehend anything you are speaking when you make such baseless threats? And again, I remind you, a man's intellect is limited and biased by his vocabulary. So again, your own threat would be based in the fact that you would be able to identify and prove the excommunication of this particular community of which you speak. The irregular retention of in a French verb in English, telling us that English adopted it from a French verb, is perhaps to avoid confusion with native rend, or by influence of a Middle English legalese noun, render, a payment of rent. So when they ask you to render a financial instrument, are they asking you to pay rent? Does that sound like you're a parent company of some sort? You dummy corporations operating as United States citizens, United States businesses, because of the conference, a gift of a nationality, a United States corporation, which is not a federal government. That's the claim of a corporate nationality and not a true indigenous governmental nationality, which is in part from French noun use of the infinitive. French. Is that Frankish then? I don't know. It must be. It's lingua frankish. It's English that adopted French and then converted it for its own meaning. Payment of rent. The sense of reduce in reference to fats, clarified by boiling or steaming, also is from late 14th century. The meaning hand over, yield up, deliver, is recorded from circa 1400. Sense of to return, thanks, a verdict. You know, where the judge passed sentence and the jury convicted you, right? That was their verdict, right? Did they convict you because you didn't know how you were already convicted? You don't know how to form that easy sentence? I fear not, for I have been redeemed. He has called me by thy name. I am his. Who the fuck is you? Oh, you. That's the individual who owes a debt to the United States. What is that debt? Is that a fidelity agreement that is already established? Isn't that fidelity agreement a protection order for internationally protected persons in the interest of Americans? Isn't that already given full faith and credit? Hasn't that already been communicated? Is attested from late 15th century, as is that of make or cause to be in a certain state. In a certain state. The meaning represent. Depict. Does that mean you can take that picture off that ID and use the other information and access an account by the name and address, which is a name and a number that identifies a record? And if it's a name and number that or name and address that's identifying that record, isn't that a postal address? Wouldn't they have the record? I mean, isn't that the one that's proclaiming there's a resident acting as a trustee by the use of the legal fiction as the name first, and then the use of the street name and number, and then expressing the trust, the public trust of which they're functioning in under that national address format? Again, isn't that an internationally protected person? And if that's an internationally protected person under full faith and credit, why are they being charged for postage stamps? I mean, again, there's already a fidelity agreement. Is that equal consideration, equal benefit? Why is one charging the other? Render, one who tears by violence. So when you render an instrument instead of tender an instrument, do you render it useless by tearing that coupon off? Have they taught you wrong? Render, a legal term, act of yielding. So when you tear that coupon off, did you yield that instrumentality over to somebody else to take care of it for you? Giving or restoring, a return, a payment. Especially of rent. See render. Probably at least in part from French noun use of the infinitive. Rend, tear a hole in, slash from top to bottom, separate in parts with force or sudden violence. You have to force that paper apart when you tear that coupon off. So did you render the instrument incapacitated? Is the best I could come up with. Incapacitated? Is there now some kind of disability to operate it in the sense that it was supposed to be, and now the state has to take care of that duty and make a general deposit and hope that the federal government will fund it for them? See, that's technically the way I think it's supposed to happen, but again, just my opinion, not legal advice. To tear, cut down. Source also of Old Frisian renda, to cut, break. Do you feel broke? I mean, all this time you're working, do you really feel like you're getting ahead like the Joneses? Or do you always feel like you're broke, working week to week or month to month even? How about even year to year? Did you know every day is his? Anything broken, I think that's the part that's broken. Your communication with him on a daily. Bark, crust, which is probably related to the noun source of rind. In Middle English, also torrenden, related rended, renting, rending. Rendering, a giving back, yielding, action of restoring. Verbal noun from render, meaning a translation, act of translating. It's from 1640s. So you see what happens with that legalese when they keep extending it and making longer and longer sentences. You got paragraph long sentences, and what they did was they rendered their opinion in a long, drawn out way to make it look prestigious. Extracting or melting of fat, the visual and dramatic art sense of reproduction and representation. Visual and dramatic arts. They use that color of law artistically, visually and dramatically, and grammatically, and graphically, and morphically. They morph it. That's that legalese. It's morphing everything. It's confusing you. Get back to the simplicity and learn how to communicate with the right ones. Let's see, rendition, fact of yielding up. Surrender of a place or possession. Rent, payment for use of property, for use of property. In a legal sense, compensation. Remember that expense? There's that compensation made periodically with reference to time of possession and use of. See, that's that commercial use. They have to condemn the land of its natural use so they can use it for its commercial purposes. Rendezvous, place appointed for assembling of troops. Troops. You see that military connotation there, like we were talking about addiction and dedication? So the term rendezvous, as many people might use it, is actually from a military assembly. Again, troops being an assembly of chimpanzees. Present yourselves, disaccustom, render a thing no longer customary. You become common to it, and it's no longer customary to yourself. A sense now obsolete. In modern sense, 1520s, render a person unaccustomed. See, you were cast forth from your mother's waters and discharged as a man, but then they rendered a person imitating as an imposter, as an impost of a man. As mom was an informant, and it was the information of a contract with terms and conditions. Stabilize, render stable, that foundation. You have to have a stable foundation first. If you don't have that, and everything's based on the fiction, then what's the credit to the fiction? You are the only credence to any of that fiction, folks. It is only your communication that can fix the communications that were mistakenly interpreted or translated in the past. And that's all it was. You have to relearn what you've been taught. Account. To count. Account in 1300. Enumerate. See, that was the communication when they enumerated the name. And it's the individual's name and number identify the record. It does not, again, identify you. And that record is relative to business being performed. That performance is a transaction that is mistaken in the identification. You're the only one that can fix that by knowing thyself. Obdurate, especially against moral influences. Stubbornly wicked, harden, render. Provision, General Education Provisions Act. Foresight, prudence, care. This is what you're giving up for, or giving up when you send your children to this public education system. You're giving up the prudence of your care and foresight to bring that child up in the ways of the Lord, if that's what you want to do. Again, I'm not forcing that on anybody. This isn't any kind of religious or spiritual advice either. This is just my opinion. Providing beforehand for the providence of his grace. Grace meaning favor, and providence be the providing beforehand. Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. It's already provided, folks. The communication was already provided. All you have to do is understand and learn thyself. Know thyself. Study to shew thyself worthy and approved unto the word of God. For every word of God is pure, and it is a shield unto he who put their trust in God. Urn, large, rounded vase used to preserve the ashes of the dead. It's a communication. It's a remembrance of the stories and images of the interactions and events and accountings of those events, whether oral tradition or literal tradition through history and natural collections and archives and such, statistical elements, mythical elements, theological elements, psychological elements, philosophical elements, enumerated elements. I don't care. It's all part of a larger record. It's all part of a larger communication. Vessel of baked clay, water jar. Run, earn, and run. See where we went here? Port, to move, stability, to run, meaning move swiftly by using the legs, go on legs more rapidly than walking. Also make haste, hurry, be active, pursue or follow a course. Let's take a look at the next one I want to mention, folks, from King James Version of the Bible, Jeremiah 51:31, wherein it talks about one post shall run to another. One post shall run to meet another, and one messenger to meet another, to shew the king of Babylon that his city is taken at one end. You have to understand and comprehend that you have to beat the Babylonian language, the lingua franca of the English language as it's used, because everything is an adoption of something that came before it. So what came before that? What word was written on your heart before any of this language evolved, devolved, or resolved any consequences or questions? He commanded, and it was done. He spake, and it stood fast. So let's go back. We're done with that one. And now we're going to get on to pretentious. And before we do, I want to remind everybody, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And the PayPal link is down in the details section for anybody who wants to share some love. And then, of course, the StreamYard link, I'm going to post that again, just in case anybody wants to jump on panel. I always appreciate it, guys. And so the next one we've got is pretentious. So let's take a look at the etymology of pretentious. Like I said, it comes to that very term, excommunicate, and excommunicate from a community. What community are we talking about? Because in so doing, you have to prove that you're either doing so with competence and full knowing of what you're doing, as the one leading that community, or subject to others of that community that are following a leader. Or you're being pretentious, characterized by or full of claims to greater excellence or importance than the truth merits. Pretension, pretension, pretend. So you go ahead and you keep pretending that you can excommunicate me from the immutable word of the Creator that I have faith in, and the way I observe it, and how I transmute it within me and communicate it therefore to others. You go ahead and keep projecting that I'm part of some individual community and not part of something greater. Because I'll reiterate, the concept there is a fallacy, wherein I use my own mother's saying, and this is why I say, don't believe me. Don't believe your neighbor. Don't believe the government. And for crying out loud, don't believe your mother. Because the very woman that stood there and told me, Keith, the police are your authority, is the same woman that told me that, Keith, how are you going to learn how to fly like an eagle if you keep hanging with this flock of turkeys, while at the same time believing that the police and those other public officials that she thinks as her authority are somehow the eagles. And that's the fallacy. If anything, again, I mind you, that those very people filling those official offices of public service, which is a public trust, means that somehow they got their powers somewhere else. In that, they take a certain oath. And I find these oaths pretentious. Like I said, when it comes to that Constitution, if you don't understand the oath of allegiance that they take, and this is from the oath of allegiance at a naturalization ceremony on the USS Midway. Do you understand where they hold these ceremonies? They hold these ceremonies on naval military institutions. Okay? When you take the oath of allegiance at your naturalization ceremony, okay? Before we get to that, let's take a look and relook at 8 USC 1101, where we talk about naturalization. The term naturalization means the conferring of a nationality of a state upon a person after birth by whatever means. And we found out that naturalization is the conference of a nationality of a United States citizen who may or may not, as a national of the United States, may or may not be a citizen of the United States. So the naturalization is still a national of the United States, wherein the United States is a corporation and not a federal government. Okay? So naturalization is still being an incorporated status or capacity of a business. They're saying you now work for the United States. In all cases, this is the enumeration at birth. It's a naturalization process, not necessarily noted for immigrants, but those that are born of the soil, born on the lands. So let's take a look at this oath again. It says you make several important promises of loyalty to the United States, not the United States of America. Loyalty means showing consistent support to something or someone. At your naturalization ceremony, you will raise your right hand and say the oath. After the oath, you become a U.S. citizen. As a new citizen, you have new responsibilities and duties that you promised in the oath. As a new corporate officer, employee, or agent of a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent anywhere along the lane, you've been deemed necessary for the business of the United States. And again, that's a military fashion. USS Midway. It's done through the Navy. The complete oath is below. You can watch the video of a USCIS naturalization oath ceremony here or visit DA. You can use the closed captioning while you watch the video or pause the video and listen to a section at a time, just like anything else. Look it up. But here it basically says, I hereby declare on oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure. Do you guys recognize abjure? Is that relative to de jure? Okay. Abjure all allegiance and fidelity. Remember, we're talking about bona fide. Bona fide, confidence, fidelity, international protection of person. It's already there. To any foreign prince, potentate, state, sovereignty, of whom or which I have hereto been a subject or citizen. Are they asking you to give up your sovereignty, folks? Do you know what your sovereignty is? Do you have full powers to comprehend? Go forth with prehension, asking questions. What is it? See if I can find it here. We were talking about bona fide. Here it is in 18 U.S.C. again, or 8 U.S.C. 1101 again. Let me just go back to the beginning. Oops. It says under F, an alien having a residence, so it's dependent upon having a residence being deemed necessary by the board. That's at Secretary of Commerce and Secretary of Treasury. In a foreign country, which he has no intention of abandoning, who is a bona fide student qualified to pursue a full course of study, and who seeks to enter the United States temporarily and solely for the purpose of pursuing such a course of study consistent with Section 1184L of this title at an established college, university, seminary, conservatory, academic high school. Remember that selective service, and it starts at the age of 14, gentlemen. Elementary school. Remember, take a look at that report card. They put the last name, comma, and then the first and middle name. That's a military styling, folks. Or other academic institution, or in an accredited language training program. Is the English is the public education system teaching English as an accredited language? Aren't you already accredited by that language? Do you suppose that's why the judge looked at me the last time I was in that court for that 7 years ago on that sixth offense possession charge, that he asked me, do you understand English? I vehemently looked at him and said, yes. See, I'm the guy who walked around with dictionaries when I was a kid. I thought I knew the English language, and I said yes. But that's why I don't say I understand. I'm coming to a much better comprehension by asking questions, doing my research, no longer believing other people's bullshit and baseless threats. See, I have a greater counsel that I can seek, and it doesn't take a college to impute that kind of higher education. Again, I remind you, a man's intellect is limited and biased by his vocabulary. And I'm not the perfect guy at it either. Like I said, I've been a bitch-ass slave all my life. I'm still healing thyself. But at least hopefully I'm able to show some progression. And like I said, I'm not part of the drama. I'm not going to sit here and let some baseless threat set me off my course. But like I said, many people have charged me, why do you pick such a hard path? It's not that I picked a hard path, it's the only one I see. So, particularly designated by him and approved by the Attorney General after consultation with the Secretary of Education. It's all about the education, folks. You got to have a bona fide education. And then you have to have a bona fide representative, right? You have to have the authorized representative. And where is that authorized representative? Authorized by the Social Security Administration. And what is it done by? On basis of reciprocity. Remember that reciprocal shit that we were talking about? Of, and notice it says foreign and not domestic. And remember, we're talking about broadcasting and narrowcasting. You have the right to broadcast. This is your freedom of expression. You have the right to narrowcast as well. Freedom of your expression to be able to project it to a smaller course of people. And then, of course, you have on the other side of that element, as a transceiver or broadcasting station, you can receive and broadcast. Both broadcast or receiving from other broadcasts all around the world, or picking and choosing your certain broadcasts that you want to narrowly define. That's the First Amendment, freedom of association. Freedom of association, freedom of the press. That has to do with petitioning the government for redress of grievances. Believe it or not, that is a communication, is it not? Believe it or not, isn't the communication already set out in bona fide representations? Isn't that already bona fide in the record? No matter what you want to put in that record as a criminal or civil record, the truth of the matter is that I have to be able to fill an official office to perform the functions thereof. And if not duly qualified, I cannot therefore be obligated to such responsibilities. It's an impossibility. And therefore, we must go back de novo, back to the beginning, ab initio, and fulfill those requirements that may be there, but make certain to declare our intents. And I only wish to speak on what the truth merits. And again, as I've said before, and I'm going to reiterate time and time again, I'm not here to be any kind of guru or anything. I've been here for a long time expressing what I've been researching and hoping other people will see the dots that I'm connecting in the same way. And if not, again, that's why I put the link down there for people to join the panel. It's an open panel. Come on up and join me and ask those questions. I need them. I'm not the only one, and I am not here to lead anybody. I'm not here to learn from anybody. I'm here to start walking with each other and bring everybody up to par. And if I find somebody greater than me, I'll be damned if I'm not going to start watching and following them too, in any aspect. And this is why I say I respect Paul. But again, I don't give a fuck whether you don't respect me or you hate me or whatever. You keep on with your drama. That's fine. That's your own little trigger session. I'm not in it. I'm here for expressing the truth in every venue I can. And there's not a damn thing that you can stop about that. Except in your community. So let's continue on again with that oath that says, I hereby declare an oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or a citizen. I fear not, for I have been redeemed. He has called me by thy name. I am his. Who the fuck is you? Because I am not an individual who owes a debt to the United States. If there is a fidelity agreement, quid quo pro, equal consideration, equal benefit. It has already been financed and settled. The loan was a gift of God. And that's what the truth merits. That I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So who's to say I'm an enemy? Who can pose that debt, saying that I owe somebody a debt, including the United States, in that very claim? Isn't that a claim against themselves? Let me help you understand that, folks. If they're claiming that a United States citizen is a United States business, and they're claiming a debt against that United States business while in business for the United States, and not giving the interest over to the United States, but keeping it in the state and making a false claim against the United States because nobody understands how this shit works. Is it not true that in order to be deemed necessary by the board, being the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of Treasury at the federal level, now you have to be performing the functions of public office of a United States business as a United States citizen? And then you're considered a national of the United States, which is the gift of a United States citizenship, so that they can convert your nationality to a business. And then you still want to claim state national. That's funny too. Because under the state constitution, which is subject, and the state ceded their jurisdiction to the Constitution of the United States by ceding their jurisdiction to the United States. You see how that works? So even if it's the Constitution of the United States of America or the Constitution of the United States, they're giving up the sovereignty to pledge allegiance to that paperwork. Release paperwork. Good one, folks. Good one. So let's take a look at the next one, which is the Constitution itself. Under overview of full faith and credit clause. Because Article 4, Section 1 says, full faith and credit shall be given in each state to the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state. It's already there, folks. So when they use the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings against you, those are already bound by protection orders and are already holding full faith and credit. See, they're supposedly protecting the public record, right? It's the integrity of the record. It's supposed to be protected in all instances. But because of the corruption on both sides of the ledger and both sides of the counters, because the people don't understand, like I explained in the video the other day when we were talking about militia, and the people coming up with these militias don't understand that if they come out in a militia activity and start fighting on the ground and stuff and don't have already comprehensively formulated a plan to institute a new government or refill the vacant offices of the government already here so they can perpetuate that authority continuously so it doesn't fall again, and you're going to have that republic if you can keep it again. See, it's already lost because of that, and it's the only way to reclaim it is by knowledge. You cannot just come in and wipe out a invading force or an occupation from a dispelled government and then say, okay, well, now somebody else's responsibility to fill it. Okay, that's your obligation comprehensively beforehand. And you can't pretend about it. You have to think about it in your imagination and pretend that if it happens, what would you do about it? So let's look at the next one, which is again Constitution Article 1, and it goes to the context below that says Congress first invoked the clause in 1790 to pass legislation establishing methods for authenticating other states' acts, records, and proceedings, not the records, acts, and proceedings of the people. This is what happens when uh, you commingle, is what I'm going to call it, the data elements of a statistical record with private data elements that aren't discernibly separated for distinct purposes. So when you start giving out names at a hospital and you don't know the conversion for that statistical state's vital statistic jurisdiction that's going to be used against you, you're going to have all kinds of people that think the legal name is the all caps letter without being able to distinguish. No, the legal name is the translation of what is given name and family name to a legal name that can then have many derivatives. Like I've said many times, look at that documentation. One place will have it Keith Little, another place will have it Little comma Keith or Little Keith Orland. You know, the different styles, they're all legal fictions. Even the name, family and given names, those are fictions in personam. Most just happen to be legal fictions as they pertain to commerce, whereas the given name doesn't and the family name doesn't. Those relate to the legacy and the inheritance. The Act provided that if a litigant duly authenticated a judicial record or proceeding, then every court within the United States would have to grant that record or proceeding the same faith and credit as it would have by law or usage in the courts of the state from whence the records came or were taken. Okay. So like I said, where did they get the data elements? They came from a private journal, a private intangible intellectual piece of property that was converted through a translation to something that it ought not be. Unless, of course, fully recognized, recognized with its own original cognition, superior and prevalent, and not pretentious. That's where the truth is merited, is in the origin, not in something somewhere midway along the line, or some conflation of a portion of. You have to take the whole record into consideration when considering one error. So let's look at the next one, because again, as it relates to animal, includes but is not limited to man under the Agricultural Code, 7 U.S. Code 1928, full faith and credit, where if we remember 1922 is the who is eligible for real estate loans, where you have to qualify for a real estate loan as a fish farmer. You have to intend to fish farm to be eligible for a real estate loan. People, in their own words, that's their very own definition. And they have to condemn the land for its agricultural or its natural use, for its commercial purposes. And according to Iowa, it's only supposed to be amongst the national forests and the upper Mississippi River Valley. So it says, in general, a contract of insurance or guarantee executed by the Secretary under this chapter shall be an obligation supported by the full faith and credit of the United States. And I want to ask you, is or is not the Social Security Administration issuing an insurance policy? Is that not full faith and credit, the protections thereof? I mean, if I'm wrong, I think it's pretty simple, but if I'm wrong, please, please, please explain it to me, because then it goes on into 28 U.S. Code 1738, state and territorial statutes and judicial proceedings, full faith and credit. And I remind you, 48 CFR 52.212-5, contract terms and conditions required to implement statutes or executive orders - commercial items, commercial services. (18 U.S.C. 7) Special maritime and territorial jurisdiction for obligations and other securities of the United States. For United States vessels. Contracts of insurance. Every document, remember our definition of endorsement says that an endorsement is an amendment to an insurance policy. Remember the definition of accident? Continuous and repeated exposure to the same conditions causing public liability, which the insured never expected nor intended. A contract of insurance guaranteed or guarantee executed by Secretary under this chapter. So let's take a look at this full faith and credit under 28. The acts of the legislature of any state, territory, or possession of the United States, or copies thereof, shall be authenticated by affixing the seal of such state, territory, or possession thereto. The records and judicial proceedings of any court of any such state, territory, or possession, or copies thereof, shall be proved or admitted in other courts within the United States and its territories and possessions by the attestation of the clerk and seal of the court annexed, if a seal exists, together with the certificate of a judge of the court that the said attestation is in proper form. Is in proper form. Such acts, records, and judicial proceedings, or copies thereof, so authenticated, shall have the same full faith and credit in every court within the United States and its territories and possessions as they have by law or usage in the courts of such state, territory, or possession from which they are taken. What is it they're taking? I explained this to my companion earlier. What is it they're taking? The new industry is the data industry. And they're taking data. It's the data elements. You're qualified to give a number in lieu of the name and address. But you keep giving a goddamn name and address, expressing that you're one of the officers in a public trust, that you can play the part of a plaintiff or a defendant under federal rules of civil procedure. It's all fictitious. It's all a presumption. It's a presumption that you're knowing of the law when you don't even know the damn definitions. And again, I said that correctly, the damn definitions. (48 U.S.C. 2150) No full faith and credit of the United States for territories and insular possessions. Chapter 20, Puerto Rico Oversight, Management, Economic Stability. Subchapter, Responsibilities of Oversight Board. In general, the full faith and credit of the United States is not pledged for the payment of any principal of or interest on any bond, note, or other obligation issued by a covered territory or covered territorial instrumentality. The full faith and credit is not pledged for the payment of any principal of or interest on any bond, note, or other obligation issued by a covered territory or covered territorial instrumentality. If you're insured, aren't you covered? Isn't that Social Security number in a proof of being covered? And that's an instrumentality of that territorial jurisdiction being special maritime for vessels of the United States to fulfill the full faith and credit of the obligations and other securities of the United States. And you've been so duly authorized to use it as such. However, again, nobody taught you how to use it. The United States is not responsible or liable for the payment of any principal of or interest on any bond, note, or other obligation issued by a covered territory or covered territorial instrumentality. So, what is it they're responsible for? Subject to appropriations, any claim to which the United States is determined to be liable under this chapter shall be subject to appropriations. The appropriations were already made. See, the conference of a nationality is the appropriation of a business franchise, known as a United States citizen, and enumerated as such at birth, and then recorded at the state level as a resident, a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board, and that would be the zone is the foreign trade zone granted by the federal government, and therefore it would be the federal Secretary of Commerce and federal Secretary of Treasury, and not the state. They're the ones that have to make that deeming necessary. See, there's a broken chain of command. Funding. No federal funds shall be authorized by this chapter for the payment of any liability of the territory or territorial instrumentality. Why is that? Because they have to get their funds from who? You. So when you understand again where the course of the credits come from, then you get to put forth your yea being your yea, your nay being your nay, and that what you've put out now must be returned. It's a communication. Remember, it says to return. Understand the communication. Sit there and make baseless threats that you're going to excommunicate anybody. That's the beauty of the English. Go ahead, sister. Greetings. How you doing, Iman?
Greetings, good. I when I got on, I heard something that you said about naturalization is the same as national. I missed all of that because I just got off the other. I didn't get that. I only heard something about
Yeah,
naturalization.
that's 8 USC 8, or excuse me, 8 USC 11. We talk about the term naturalization means the conferring of a nationality of a state upon a person after birth by any means whatsoever. When we go up here and we see national means a person owing permanent allegiance to a state. Now, that permanent allegiance goes to the um, confidence and fidelity. Okay? And then it says the term national of the United States means a citizen of the United States, or a person who, though not a citizen of the United States, owes permanent allegiance to the United States. So it's the national, which is the conference of a nationality through naturalization or by any means whatsoever, the enumeration at birth for being born on the land. That's just another means of naturalization, saying that conferred a nationality of a state and that's national of the United States is a business.
So, are you saying if someone says that they're under naturalization, they are also considered a national based on permanent allegiance
Yes,
and citizens of the United States?
Yep.
Okay, okay. I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly.
And that's
Okay.
because everybody's falling into this Constitution. You know, all these officials that have to take a oath to the Constitution, they give up their sovereignty. And in giving up that sovereignty, they pose that we're the sovereign citizens. No, we didn't give up our sovereignty. If we're a citizen of anything, it's a citizen of heaven. Because again, I fear not, for I have been redeemed. He's called me by thy name. I am his. And I will sacrifice my body. Because that's all it is the body. There is something much more prevalent and greater than this body, and that is the spiritual existence of every breath I take, which is an act of God. The only thing I hope to do is express that act of God. And the better I get at performing in such a manner, the more people will see me as not the angry old man. That's my intents and purposes, because that's the only way people are going to see this message better, is by me being better. And again, it's not about me. My numbers have been on a steady rise from day one. And like I said, I didn't start this yesterday. Been doing this for a long time. I'm not about the numbers. I'm again about the message. It's always been the same. I'm doing my research. I'm showing where I'm researching, how it correlates, my opinion of it, and I hope to have people's other opinions and stuff interjected so I can get better at it. That's it. So let's take a look at this next one. Says 16 USC 16 conservation. And it says pledge of full faith and credit of the United States for payment of compensation for lands, etc. taken. And it says the Congress further acknowledges and directs that the full faith and credit of the United States be pledged to the prompt payment of just compensation as provided for by the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution of the United States for those lands and properties taken by this act. So when we look at the Libra Code, Article 38, and comprehend the distinguishment between public and private as it goes to Section 2 of the Libra Code, public and private property of the enemy, and the matter that we're commingling the data elements in a system of statistics without separating their specificness so that they're not misused, mistaken, and create public liabilities known as little white lies. We're doing it with educated minds. Again, like I said, people, a good, healthy, strong nation has a good, healthy, educated people. Protection of persons, and especially of women, of religion, the arts and sciences. Punishment of crimes against the inhabitants of hostile countries. When we go to Article 38, it says private property, unless forfeited by crimes or by offense of the owner, can be seized only by way of military necessity for the support or other benefit of the Army or of the United States. And then again, correlating and concurrent with that Fifth Amendment for that just compensation, it says if the owner has not fled, the commanding officer will cause receipts to be given, which may serve the spoliated owner to obtain indemnity. Again, all glory goes to him. If that's the way you see it, then I can only have that much more faith that I am doing what I'm supposed to and it is coming across properly. But again, I need that outside perspective and objective views to help me along the way as well. I don't want to be the fool. I know a lot of times I can look like a fool. But that's the whole thing about staying out of the drama. I'm not part of the drama. I'm part of the education, and that's it. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So I'm building myself up through my own research, studying to shew myself worthy and approved so I can be careful to maintain those good works. That's it. That's where the truth has merits. So anyway, that's the end of this stream here for today. Iman, you got anything for us? I'm going to be back at 6 o'clock, folks, to do the regular scheduled one. But
I'm trying to play catch up. uh, I've been trying to play catch up for a while. It makes it difficult because I have no one to dialogue with. I just have the four walls. They don't answer back, and a lot of reading and note taking. So it makes it a little bit more difficult. So,
Yeah. Well,
you
I
know,
appreciate you joining me today instead of the lawful living thing, but I kind of missed that too. But I wanted to get up here, like I said, spur of the moment to get this cleared up because I'm not here, like I said, folks, as a guru or anything like that. I'm not trying to lead you or mislead you. I'm exposing the research that I do, and I hope you see it the way I do. And if not, I still need your objective view. That's all I'm saying. And
yeah,
I'm not going to sit here and get involved in all kinds of drama about it and start using ad hominems against each other because that's the basic principle. It's the name and number identify a record, and they're using even just the name against you. Understand, it's not about you. It's about a collective as a whole, and this society is going down the drain. Go ahead, sister.
called me yesterday, and as much as I'm doing my studies, they're studying too, but they seem to just call me when they don't want to do the work to get for me to give them my intellectual uh, property, for them to be able to get their work done. But you have to put in the work. This spiritual journey is not easy, and if you don't put in the work, you're just not going to be able to do it. I'm doing it the best that I'm doing right now. It's hard for me because the spiritual attack on me has been literally a physical attack. It's not spiritual alone, it's also physical, and it's some days I'm literally trying to keep myself from falling apart. But
I hear you. I hear you.
but
But
but hmm but
um,
since I've been, putting them into like a lesson plan, it's helping me to just see it over and over and over again, and it kind of makes sense. So,
right, and like I said, this isn't something that you do one day and then it's good forever. It's a practice and a lifetime. You have to make it a lifestyle. So once you get into this, it's like this thing here on the front of my lip. Okay, in this metaverse, this fictional universe, I get to use this as a trigger, and it's a very effective trigger, and it's brought a lot of concepts up and a lot of conversations. But the big distinction is, again, this metaverse emboldens people to do things that they otherwise wouldn't do. And this is living proof because not once, and you guys, most of you for the most part, know how long I've been using this. It's been a few months. It's got some good growth coming in nice and thick. But this is the only place it ever triggers anybody. When I go out to the store, which I go to regularly, almost daily, when I hop on the bus, when I go see the doctors, for this lung cancer stuff. I've got another appointment coming up on the 5th to go do a chest scan, and then I've got a another clinic visit on the 12th. And in the meantime, I'm gaining weight and everything. And these are all my own private experiences, and they're all mentioning and complimenting me about how much better I'm looking and stuff. And not one of them has ever mentioned anything about this, including the security guard up at the store, the sheriffs down at the courthouse, the judges I've been in front of here recently, the doctors. None of them, none of them get triggered by it and say anything about it. If they do,
yeah.
they keep their trigger silent.
Well, I've never been triggered by it, and I don't look people at their outward ability. I think everything comes from the heart, and that's where I resonate, my outwardly expression, so to speak. And
Absolutely.
that's the way I've always been. And, it just seems like, outwardly, I guess my aura, sometimes people feel intimidated, but like I said, all people have to do is ask. And that's why I ask questions, because dialoguing and asking questions is the best way that I am able to learn in conversation. But sometimes things are what they are,
Yep,
but
absolutely.
I really do appreciate everything. I'm working to the point of even trying to. I was just looking up the other day about creating a, trying to change my extension, my domain extension. On some of the things that you've talked about on your platform. So I'm always looking at everything, not just staying focused on one particular thing.
Right. It's about, you know, we talk all the time about status and correction and stuff, and it's not about correction. It's more about positioning yourself and knowing where you're at in life, so you can get to where you need to be, so you can be who you're meant to be. This is the problem with ego and the materialistic visualites. People that want to grow up being fed with a silver spoon, thinking that's the lifestyle and everything, and they turn around and grow up and give in to bigger conveniences than their parents did, and so we end up declining even more and more every day throughout modern technology and society. In some things, Theodore Kaczynski was correct.
Well, that's because a lot of these, the children of the 80s and 90s, they came up in the era where everything is fast food. So they want everything quick and fast. They are not looking up the road, they're looking right in front of their face. And that's how a lot of the people today are doing. They just want
Yeah,
everything, to manifest instantaneously.
right, and that's one of those things that tells me that this metaverse, no matter what anybody wants to think about it, it's not near what anybody really thinks it is. Even myself, like I said with this, a lot of people want to project and state their fears and false ideologies and everything, calling it a Hitler mustache or this and that, and trying to project their concept of what I'm trying to do. And that again, a man's intellect is limited uh, and biased by his own vocabulary. So when people start speaking out like that, it tells me what kind of person they are. But in
Yes.
reality, as I'm out here in the real world, it's just proving to me how fake this metaverse is.
Right. And I've learned recently outside of the metaverse, a lot of the people that saying they're becoming awoke or aware, the conscious community, those are the people that are more dangerous to us today than people who are just becoming familiar that things around them are changing. And like
Yeah,
I said, when I saw you with that, I didn't think anything out. I thought it was cute, Charlie Chaplin. And basically, if anyone took the time to read about Hitler, they'll find out a lot of the things he was doing. He was trying to wake up a lot of the people to make them aware what was truly going on, because the wars that occurred there was between America and Germany, but mostly America influenced a lot of the negativity that took place there. And if you tell a lot of people from America that today, they'll look at you, oh no, we're the number one, this, that, and the other. But a lot of times when, and I'm not saying America itself, because we already know between yourself and myself, the United States have no birth, um I forgot the
no
train of
birth
thought.
registration.
No birth registration, correct. So everything is on paper, but because of the indoctrination, people just hear and they mimic, they don't read to go and make the association between the land and what's on paper. So
Right, and
again,
they
it just
they
is
did.
what it is.
Yeah, they, for the most part, people disposition themselves through that lack of knowledge. And again, it's really nobody's fault. It's the way the system works, and we have to recognize it at some point in time. Like I say, there comes a point in time where you're full grown, big boys and girls, and you just have to realize and stand for what it is. You have certain rights, duties, and responsibilities that all go together. And if you're going to sit there and try to placate that you enjoy these comforts and conveniences without realizing you're giving up a lot of those rights and stuff, that's on you. That's on you. That's because you got greedy and gluttonous. You're muted.
I'm sorry, a young lady, she, she's always asking me to assist her, with her ears. And so every time she does that, instead of coming to myself directly, she's going through, asking someone else to ask me. And I feel like if you're an adult and I'm an adult and you need my assistance, come
Yep.
and get that information directly for myself, because that way, by the time the message gets back to you, it's not misconstrued.
Yeah.
So if we're going to do business, let's do business as adult. I explained to you, what my criterias are, and if it's applicable to you and we can work together, let's do it, because it has to be a win-win situation for both. Because
Yep.
you know what was really hurtful, Keith? What was really hurtful? One of her children, she has two boys. One of her children came up to me and he said, they call me Nana. And he says, Nana, when I hear you, everything that you talk about, you're always right about what you talk about. So he said, Nana, would you mind teaching me? And I said, no, darling, I don't mind teaching you, giving you the knowledge that I have. So he went to his mom and he said, Mom, would you mind bringing me over so Nana can teach me? Because he already gave me a synopsis of what he'd like to learn. And she said yes to him. And it's been more than 2 months now. And that child, she never brought him back. So why are you going to lie to the child and tell him?
Yeah.
And I know he's ready to learn. When a child is ready to learn and he comes and you ask you, he's ready to learn. But
Yeah.
some parents, I don't know. It hurt me. It just hurt me to my core, because sometimes when I think about the children, it just hurts me sometimes. The parents say, "Oh, I love my children. I love my children," but then,
See, and
it's, I don't know.
that's that's one of those things I got to give my adoptive parents credit for because they weren't lazy. They didn't give in to the convenience. Along with the public education system that I was still going to school when they adopted me, um, they they were prepared to educate us on their own as well, aside from what we learned in the public education system. So they were heavily involved in our education by helping us with our um, any kind of school projects like book reports or anything like that. They had their own library, the Britannica, all of it, all kinds of nature books and history books, Time Magazine, National Geographic subscriptions, all that stuff, and taught us with the home gardening and home cooking and mechanics and all of this, and it was just great. But
That was the
still,
situation in my home. My dad made sure that we had a plethora of texts, for reading, that we didn't have to go to the library unless we had to. And he tried to assist in many ways by assisting us with schoolwork. And if he found out information that he thought it would enlighten our intelligence, he brought it home and he passed it on to us, and we just went and did the research.
yeah,
I don't know.
and see that was part of the issue with me and my parents when I was 15. I got kicked out because I told them I wasn't going to church anymore. I found out the fallacy and the blasphemy of church. And that, again, that was one of the things that they were bringing me up. But once I did that, um, I should have caught on, as I'm sitting here talking about communication and it being ecclesiastical. But at that time, I was still kind of quite young and everything. And I've been through a lot of different things in life, had a lot of experiences. Um, a lot of names I could drop, like Scott to be, been in all kinds of businesses, and I've never had a problem communicating with anybody, either through my work ethics or my intentions or my schedule or anything like that. Every last one of them actually worked out kind of well if it weren't for certain outside um, issues or situations that I just wasn't willing to let interfere, and somehow they did. A lot of different things. And of course, I was the bitch ass slave. I was the fool. Go ahead, sister.
Well, we all make errors in our life. I've always tell people, I'm not perfect. I'm imperfectly perfect. And I remember in my years when I was out there, in the corporate world, and I was working, I never took a job just for making friends. I said, if a friendship came out, if a friendship developed, that's a good thing. That's a plus. But I'm here to do and learn,
Yeah.
to influence myself. So, I'm just me. I'm never trying to put on airs and be like anyone except for myself. That's the only way I know how to be.
Yeah, and that's the way you get your acceptance and stuff into no matter what communities are out there. So again, back to the communication, excommunication, baseless threat. It's just useless. If somebody really knows who they are and emulates that, the people that want to communicate with them will see that, and it will be inviting.
Always,
So,
it is true. Because, as my one cousin was, because over the years, my vocabulary and my diction, diminished. That's because, once I started, being at home and doing more things and not really being around people, my vocabulary sense diminished. But I'm working on improving on those things. And not to be what we say smart, because we know smart is to cause
mhm.
pain. But it's, I think, when one has an intellect where you can talk to people on certain levels, it makes you more rounded, and then you can see from where you were to where you've grown. That's it for
Exactly.
me.
Yeah, and that's why I say I can't reiterate it enough, and you can quote me all you want. A man's intellect is limited and biased by his vocabulary. I urge you, don't stop using your vocabulary, but learn how to use it. When you find a mistake, be susceptible to it and know that nobody's perfect, even me. People can catch me making grammatical errors. I'm not perfect, but at least I'm open to it. So, anyway, with that, we are out. And again, I appreciate your support, everybody. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button.
Appreciate your
And
support myself. And oh, I was thinking the other day, because I'm still working on my situation. It really has affected my my private life. And I just feel it's whatever simulation we're in, these spiritual, physical attacks can really, um if you're not in, if your heart is not in where it is for the Most High, I don't know how people make it. So it's, again,
yeah,
that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me going.
yeah, and that's why I say that's that immutable promise to seek counsel in Him. Who can excommunicate anybody from that? That's your own choice. So if you're going to excommunicate somebody, then you have to define what community you're going to excommunicate them from, and then you have to prove that you can do so. So, to me, baseless threats. A man's intellect is limited and biased by his vocabulary. And with that, folks, again, I thank you for your support, Iman. We'll see you again next time. I will be back at 6 o'clock. See you then. And in the meantime, folks, I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back or not. And that's to say that I don't care if you hate me or don't respect me. That's on you. So may God bless you and have a good night.